Greetings, everyone. I hope you are all fine. Today's lesson is going to be very useful and interesting. Today you're going to learn how to read an English book of fiction. Now, fiction is something where the characters are not real. They're made up. And so what's the first thing that you do in reading this book of fiction? You have to ask yourself, who is telling the story? The first step, of course, is to look at that question and say, okay, who is telling the story? Now, there's a difference. There's the author, and he wrote the book. And then there's the narrator. The narrator is the storyteller. He's telling the story. Now, there are two types of narrators. The first one is called first-person narrator. Now, this is a narrator who is also a character in the book. And you look for certain keywords when you're reading the first couple of paragraphs. The keywords are I, me, my, and when you see these keywords, then you know that the story is written from the first person, all right? First person narrator. Now, the narrator is now also a character in the story, and it's more personal. You feel like this narrator is talking to you. All right. Now, the second type of storyteller or narrator is called third-person narrator. Now, this narrator is not inside of the story. This narrator is outside of the story. And this narrator has nothing to do with the characters, but he does know what they all think and what they all do. But he is not related or connected at all. Now, the key words to locate this narrator is he, she, it. All right, these are key words that when you're reading the introduction to the book, you need to know who is the narrator. So now let's look at a couple of books and see if you can find what type of narrator is telling us the story. We're going to look at books like this today because these are classical books, but they're also adapted. An adapted book is a very simplified version. The sentences are simpler, the vocabulary is simpler. And so this one is Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. So let's look inside and see if you can identify what narrator it is. When you open up to the first page, you want to look for those key words that I mentioned. Remember, first-person narrator has I. Third-person narrator has he or she or it. So I'm looking at the very first sentence here, and I see I, Jim Hawkins, will write my tale. I will keep nothing. So right away, I know that this is a first-person narrator, and that means that this is also a character, a main character in the story, telling me his story. So it's very personal, all right? Now, a little tip here is that when you see this text, the narrator is in text that does not have quotation marks around it. Because if it has quotation marks around it, then that is a character speaking. So you've got to look for the narrator in the non, where it does not have any quotation marks. As you can see this text here, this first paragraph, no quotation marks. And so I see all my I's here. This is first person, okay? So let's look at another book. Again, a classic. This one is Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. And let's look and see if you can identify who's telling the story. All right, first person or third person narrator. Let's go inside. Turn to the first page, and you'll find this within the first couple of paragraphs. Now, if you look here, I'm beginning to see there's no quotations, which is good. That means there is no, this is where the narrator is speaking. I don't see I don't see my keyword I, but I have to be careful. Turn the page. All right, I don't see I, but then look here. Oh, here's an I. Now, I'm going to ask you, my students, is this a first-person narrator or is this the third-person narrator? Remember what I said? If the I is in quotes, that is not a first-person narrator. This means a character is talking. So go back up and you see, I see he and she. This is third-person narrator. So this narrator is outside of the story telling me what's going on. Okay? Well, I hope you found that very useful. And I want you to practice this. There's a little quiz at the end of the video. And with that being said, until next time, good luck with your English.